Hey there, friends. It's the Saturday show, which means I'll be talking to Christian Finnegan. You know, after last week, someone emailed me, I forget who it was, and said, you know, your conversations with Christian are just so great. You have such great chemistry. I always love how he interprets and articulates things. Why don't you guys do your own show? Well, I guess we kind of do. It's almost every Saturday or whenever Christian's available. Maybe we should just call it Finnegan's or Finnegan Saturdays, or I don't know, sometimes Ophira will join us. So I don't really want to name it. I just want to keep doing it because I love talking to this guy. I love his interpretation. I love his humor. I love his heart. I love his sense of moral clarity. And I love that he always is never afraid to give his opinion on things. He's so great when it comes to music, too. If you haven't subscribed to his newsletter to support him, you should go to newmusicforolds.substack.com right now and do yourself a favor and subscribe to that. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. I've learned so much, discovered so much new and old music that I didn't even know existed. Love Christian Finnegan, love talking to him, and love improvising with him. Love when we just start talking and whatever happens, happens, which is exactly how this conversation begins. I thought this was real funny. I said things and events, and somehow we got to chainmail. Christ Finnegan, ladies and gentlemen, on Twitter and all the social medias, Christian Finnegan. He's on them all. We talk about threads. We talk about 4th of July and fireworks and cocaine in the White House and the ridiculous media attention and coverage of it and more. It's always great when we get Christian Finnegan to join us. So let's do it right now. Yay! It's Christian Finnegan Saturdays now. You know, I change things. I try things. Now I've been posting these on Saturday. People love you whenever they can get you. Thank you.
That's very kind of you. I'll take them on any day.
I feel like it's one more day of events and things to talk about. We often talk about events and things as well as our own lives. So
I love events. I especially love things.
Right. What do you prefer?
I think events are more exciting,
right?
Certainly than things. I think of things, but things are more. They're forever. They're eternal. They're more. They're like rocks,
right?
You know.
Yeah.
Whereas events are very undependable. Events are very exciting, but then they go away. If then events have no longer happened, then they're no longer events, and they're just things.
Right. They're just memories.
Are,
right. But I, someone like you probably has bought a thing to bring to an event and enjoyed the event more because of said thing. I bet someone like you would do that.
I'd try my best to not show up at an event without a thing, and I'd try my best not to turn things into events.
You recently attended a concert, which is an orchestra of, what was it that you watched?
What do you mean?
It was like an orchestra. You went and watched music.
I went to see a couple concerts. I went and saw The Cure and Tears for Fears. What are you talking about? That not talking about that Game of Thrones thing, are you?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was a couple years ago. Yeah, that was.
Because I remember I thought you brought the conductor stick and a Game of Thrones outfit, which were two things you brought to that event.
I did. Well, I mean, I was wearing it anyway, so it worked out. I mean, it was a brisk fall day, if I do recall. So I had my chainmail on already.
You're always wearing your chainmail.
It's good to layer. It's good to layer, and nice. By the way, when we were in Iceland a couple months ago, we went to a Viking museum or something like that, and I put on a chainmail.
Oh, really?
Top, and holy crap, they are so heavy. I mean, when you see those medieval, those sword type movies, or Game of Thrones or whatever, and you see those fights and they just look like lumbering doofuses, and you're like, this is...
Well, the sword is really pretty heavy to wield and swing. I guess you don't think about the helmet and the armor that you would be wearing. And so it makes one imagine that in such combat, that kind of death, you might see it coming for 30 seconds, because as you're winding up to get your sword back off the ground, you see them slowly coming at you. You're like, I'm not going to make it. This guy's going to get me before I get him. This shit's too heavy.
Oh, that's always my nightmare too, is the knowing you're going to die, but it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. That's my recurring nightmare that I have. But yeah, the idea of just watching the sword, here it comes.
Right. Right. You don't want to, nobody wants to go out like that, seeing the ground coming at them. Just don't tell me. I
have this, we're jumping around a little bit. It's a Saturday. We don't need to be organized. It's a Saturday. I have this image that I've constantly tried to put in something, or, when you're watching a soccer game and you're watching a penalty shot,
Sure.
and you'll see, and a lot of times with those penalty shots in soccer, it's basically, if you're the goalie, did you guess left or did you guess right? You know what I mean? Because like the guy's going to kick it one side or the other. And a lot of it's just like, did you guess properly? And sometimes you'll see like the goalie will jump to the left and the ball will be kicked to the right. And so it hasn't happened yet. Your humiliation has not occurred yet, but it's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like that little period where the goalie realizes he's jumped in the wrong direction, but the ball hasn't hit the net yet. I relate to that so hard. That moment of just fuck, that is like that has so much psychological and emotional juice for me that I don't know. I find myself thinking a lot about that moment of just knowing you fucked up, but it hasn't fully sunk in yet. You haven't fully tasted defeat yet, but it's happening.
But in that case, did you fuck up? Because you can only be as good as your guess. Is very little data you can read on the guy kicking. So in your life, you're blaming yourself. Like, is it completely your responsibility in those situations? Or are you like, I wish I could have done better, but oh man, I put that stinker out there.
I don't know what it is. It's just this feeling of impending doom, but not doom. Do you know what I mean? Like that's, I may have mentioned this. I didn't mean to turn this into therapy, but like I have this recurring nightmare all the time. And it is some variation of I'm the pilot of a plane or a boat or a spaceship and the engines have died and I'm the only one who knows it. That's why that submersible thing, which we talked about, was so, that part of it was very poignant to me, because just the idea of like, oh fuck, we're all going to die. But we haven't died yet. It's like so brutal. You knowing that that's a thing and that you have that nightmare. Do you immediately think, well, that's got to have something to do with your childhood or an issue that you experience or a trauma? Or do you not spend time thinking about the root of it? Or do you not spend time thinking about it much at all in terms of what you might do about it? Because my mind immediately goes to like, man, if I had that feeling or that issue, I have my own that I've often talked about. I'd try to be like, where is that coming from? Is there anything I can do about it? Because I don't want those dreams. I don't want them either, and yet I seem to really want to turn into them and lean into them. But I think it's like everybody brings their own box of crayons to those foundational childhood events and memories and relationships. And so you're going to color it your own way.
Sure. So yes, indeed.
Yeah. So yes, I do think that it is inspired by things that happen in your life, but two people are going to interpret it in different ways.
No doubt.
My older brother processed it in a very different way than I did.
Right. Right. It's a really good point when talking about the boxes of crayons, that it's like my sibling, who I grew up in the same house with the same parents, the same family, with a lot of the same, quote, trauma, drew a completely different picture. He didn't even have crayons, by the way. He had like a graphite pencil. I was over here with all the, like, I don't even, how did he turn out or be affected this way or that way by that and me differently? And by the way, just on that note, I've always had this theory, being the younger brother, was so much easier because I watched my brother draw his life and I was like, ooh, outside the lines, a little too far. Don't do that.
How much older is your brother?
He's like 2.5 years.
Yeah. See me. That was the same with me. My older brother's 2 years older. But, yeah. So I don't know, and on a much more basic level, my dogs are the same way. It's like,
sure,
they experience the same neighborhood, and yet they relate to it in completely different ways. Now, obviously, they didn't grow up together, so it's not quite the same. But, people, it's the whole nature nurture. It's a, sort of a version of that same conversation. I think it's 50-50. It's like you're experiencing the same phenomena, and you're relating to you're reacting to the same stimulus, but you're bringing your own particular batch of crazy to it.
So then, without necessarily getting to the root, because it sounds like you I don't think actually if you really answered the point, which is, do you think it was anything? Do you think it's from anything? That feeling that you have, do you think there's a catalyst in your life for it? And if so, because then you can maybe address it, or how do you think about it, avoiding that feeling?
I think for me, yes. I mean, I think a therapist or any sort of, I try to not draw straight sort of young adult novel connections to things. It's like X happened, so that's why Y. It's. I think the brain is a little more tricky than that.
I think it's a good idea. I think you got to be very careful. Very careful. I mean, the fact that I went right to it is evidence of that. Go ahead.
But I mean, sometimes I think maybe I fight that a little too hard, where it's like sometimes when I used to go to therapy, luckily I'm healed now. But when I used to go, when I say healed, I mean I can't financially justify it. When I used to go to therapy every week, I would say certain things to my therapist, who was a very cool dude, but he's this New Zealand dude, and kind of just he was like the least pretentious. He is the least pretentious dude I've ever met, and I would be like, well, maybe, I would say like some childhood thing. And I was like, well, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. And he's like, why are you being silly? This, 2 + 2 = 4. It's like, this clearly is a result of X. And I think that a dime store psychologist would say like, oh, the fact that your brother was in the hospital his entire life and was on the verge of dying for his entire, from my ages 8 to 15, he was like basically on the verge of dying all the time. That feeling of like doom could come at any minute. Like that's a pretty clear, sort of thing. So yeah, I do think that probably had a lot.
Isn't that trauma that makes the simple diagnosis? I'm a nickel store therapist. I've always thought that if you have something like that, you have to then you establish skills, routines, things that protect you from having to feel that, because it's that's not fun. That's too much. It's very painful. You want to avoid it. So I'm going to build this into my life so as to not put myself in a situation to ever have that again.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I really, we all have our own shit. So
that's why this is good to kind of talk out. Yeah.
I feel like I need to state that. So I didn't mean to turn this into woe is me, because we all have our own shit that we deal with. But as I've also mentioned a few times, on the podcast, my mother had borderline personality disorder and was a handful, shall we say. And the metaphor I've always used to describe what it was like living with her is that she was like a flopping electrical wire in the street, like just flopping around with sparks coming off of it, and you're standing in a puddle of water. Is sort of how it.
Jesus.
And so it's like, there's always this just fear of like, when is shit going to get bad?
All going to get fried. We could get fried any second.
And so I think that feeling of kind of always being afraid of what's going to happen and what might happen is a way of protecting yourself. So it's like, I'm ready when things get bad. I'm ready.
Yeah, I think that's such a common thing. And I can't really talk about it that much. I don't think I can. And I think that's why it's really important, because I think most people probably can look at their lives and be like, this was really tough, and I have developed ways to avoid that because I can't go back there.
But
whether it be trauma or whatever you call it.
We all have our own. Yeah. When I hear people talk about like, oh, my mother was so overprotective, and or my dad was X, or all these things that I have I cannot relate to at all.
Sure.
Like that it's just, again, we're all fighting our own windmills.
Yeah, my parents hugged me a lot, told me they loved me a lot, told me they were proud of me a lot, spent a lot of time with me. And I don't think they were abusive in any kind of traditional ways that you might imagine. And I'm
so sorry. It must be hard to be an artist under those circumstances.
Well, I think I used to always say, because I had to come up with some answer for why I became a comedian, why anybody becomes a comedian when they ask you when you're doing an interview. And I was like, I've always thought if I'm going to make it a binary, it's not enough hugs or too many hugs. I definitely got the latter, maybe. So I needed them more. I needed them more. I needed them constantly. I needed people to tell me to
read that hug needle. It's like there's got to be a perfect number. What is a good number of hugs? Say you have a 10-year-old child. What is the proper number of hugs over a given week that a parent should administer to that child?
I think certainly like one a day where there's a kind of a good night maybe hug. Yeah. I think that there are exceptions where something happened, a terrible thing happened, and then there's this physical affection there. So you don't want to predict that. So hopefully that doesn't happen every day, but maybe a kid has a real struggle every day. So maybe there's more. It's a good one. I think maybe one or two a day is probably.
So like 10.5 or something. That would be 1.5 hugs per day.
Sure. Yeah. Just I think it's good to tell your kids or anybody that you love them when given the appropriate opportunity. But, you can do too much.
Yeah.
Then you can end up never letting them leave your control because something bad could happen. Mm-hmm. And that 1% chance, what if they got kidnapped? How would I feel? I don't know. How's your kid going to feel their entire life thinking they're going to get kidnapped everywhere they go, for Christ's sake? What are you doing? Let them go to the mall.
There was some thread I saw on Twitter, and I don't remember who said it.
You let your kid go to the mall alone? What? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, did you not grow up? Did you not live?
Yeah. And kids were getting snatched left and right from the mall. You read about it all the time. What? You don't know anybody that got snatched. You don't know anybody.
Everybody feels like they're one person removed from a child abduction. It's like, well, no, I don't know anybody personally, but I think I know somebody who knows somebody. No, you don't. You read about someone.
That's right. I've always thought it's at least two people removed, at least.
At the very least. But, I saw some thread on Twitter basically about how do they put it? That we all basically want to ignore our children and that modern life does not allow you to do that anymore. That because that everyone's basically trying to structure their community in a way that allows you to ignore your kids in the way that our parents ignored us, in the sense that it's just like, my parents didn't know what I was doing after school on a day-to-day basis. It was just like, you get home for dinner. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, well, hey, I'm going to Matt's or whatever, I'm going to my friend's house. But it's like parents now can't do that. And so they have to live in these communities that are just like ultra policed or just baby proofed and rendered completely danger free so that they can not be stressing out about their kids.
Well, it's simpler than that, though, because every parent has their kid. Every parent, I should say, whose kid has a phone. So it's over the age of 12. So under the age of 12, that applies more. But you track your kid, or even if you weren't using an app, God forbid something happened, you can find their phone. So
yeah. I mean, that's the thing.
But kids under 12 don't have phones.
You think that would make parents be more relaxed, but it actually, I think, does the opposite.
Oh, I fully agree. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've done it in my own life.
I'm talking theoretically, realistically.
Well, you go on that app. It's not always accurate. The joke in my act was I was like trying to find out where my daughter was, and she should at this point be on the Tappan Zee Bridge, but she was in the middle of the Hudson. Her phone made it look like she was in the river. I'm like, oh my God, the bridge has collapsed. Swim. And then like seconds later, it corrects itself and she's in Nyack. I'm like, wait a second. Okay. Speaking of things that affect things differently, you have two dogs. I had to get to 4th of July fireworks. I've been railing against them all week. I've tried every different angle. What are your thoughts on how do you feel about the fireworks? It's easy to say dogs and veterans are affected, and we shouldn't have them. But the fireworks people will find you disgraceful. They don't have dogs. People who have fireworks must not have dogs.
They don't, and they are. I listen. You know, everyone's trying to sort of keep the nostalgia of their youth going. You're not going to get people to stop doing fireworks, but it's like, right. Are you doing this for your kids? Or are you doing this for you? Like you're trying to relive your feelings. Because I remember going out and then, you know, oh, we're going to go out and shoot off some bottle rockets. Like that was very fun when I was 11 years old until 13, and then stopped being fun for me. I don't understand it. I've never understood it. There's a long bit on my very first album about how everyone convinces themselves that they'll enjoy fireworks, but really they don't. And literally the track is called Fireworks Are Lame.
Oh, I wonder if I can get away with playing it without getting pinged.
Yeah, sure. It's on Two for Flinching, my first album.
I think I get a copyright violation.
Dude, no one's coming after you.
No, right. No, but they would knock it down. It might knock the episode down.
I don't think you're at any risk.
I'll play it then. I'll play it and see what happens. Yeah, but I mean, I can always edit it out.
Well,
that
I'll have
awesome.
to check with the Christian Finnegan division of Comedy Central Records to see if
we've got them on the line right now. Hello, it's us, the Christian Finnegan division. We're Aussie now.
Wow, they're okay. I wasn't sure it was.
I don't know what it was. That's fair. Fair. So the fireworks. Well, can we just genderize it? Can we quickly just? It's all. Do any women buy fireworks? If they do, fine, great. But are they ever telling their husbands, you know, you really should spend $1,000 on fireworks? It's a little boy thing. We blow shit up. We become men. We still blow shit up.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much more complicated than that. But you see,
I thought so.
You see these drone displays that they have in China.
Yeah,
and like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we trotting out our jalopy when they have a Porsche? like that stuff is so much more impressive than our stupid fireworks, and yet we're still clinging to them. Like, why aren't we just come on, guys? We can do better. It's been that basically with a bit, that I talked about is just like, it's the same fireworks as when we were a kid. They're the exact same. There's no difference. And we all pretend that we're impressed by them. And we're all like, oh, well, this year wasn't that good, but last year was better. No, it wasn't. Last year sucked too. Next year is also going to suck. It's, it's just not that interesting. I don't get the connection, but it's like, I also don't understand why dudes get into grilling or, chainsaws and stuff. So there's a whole realm of manhood that is locked to me. So I just kind of put it in that category of like, all right, if gender is a spectrum, then I'm clearly not at the peak end.
Last night,
the masculine side.
At the hangout with listeners, I want to throw this out to you and get your reaction because you'll probably have a great joke or thought on it.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Well, I said to everybody last night, my daughters are 16 and 18. They have what would be described as attractive bodies in society. They certainly get a lot of attention.
I'm not really crazy about where this is going, but sure.
They certainly get a lot of attention. I said last night, if you want to know how your teenage daughter is being looked at when they're walking on the street, walk down the street about 15 feet behind your daughter and watch. And so I've conducted that experiment. But yesterday I had these guys come to put in a front door, and I couldn't do that myself. I do a lot around the house. That's a really hard thing to get right at your front door. You got to get it right. So these three guys,
to hold it in place to try to get the hinges. Yeah.
One guy I know and have known for years and love him and trust him in my family and my house with my kids. The other guys, I generally trust them too, in terms of I don't think they're going to steal anything or, screw anything up. My daughters, as you know, is hot, are walking around in their bikinis wearing, Ava has like a thong one. So it's like just her butt is fully out. And I'm just like, no need to walk around in front of those guys. And they're like, why are you, because in any other situation that would sound inappropriate. I'm like, because I think that you draw the line at letting people know where you live. You look like that. Okay, but you don't have to let them know your address. So listeners had mixed responses. Some of them fully disagreed with me. But one guy just said, maybe if you were more of a man, you would have been able to put that door in and never had this issue to begin with because you couldn't do the work yourself and had to invite these other men over. So really, it's on you.
Wow.
If something happens.
Pretty brutal. I mean, okay, even if you make that argument about putting it in the store,
pretty funny.
Surely there's work around your house that you have to hire outside people to do. So it's like, all right, fine, it's not a door, it's installing an AC system or whatever, or
Sure.
Like you at some point in your life you will have to hire people to come do things at your house. So,
and I'm saying don't wear a bra and underwear in front of them is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I can see that it's like you're kind of filling in too much of the math of the
crime. I've created a whole crime already in my head. Yeah, that could.
Yeah, it's like you've taken away all the variables. It's like, oh, naked lady, home address, door that I'm installing. So who knows what I'm doing to the lock?
There you go.
Yeah, it's probably not an ideal situation.
Okay,
I cannot fathom having daughters for that reason. That's got to be just
normally
incredibly...
I push back on a lot of the different things, and obviously the shaming. And I never talk about how my girls look, certainly to them. But there's a lot of thoughts about that. But that was a very specific situation. I was like, you're wearing nothing. Like, okay. So next question, God just had to get your take on was this: cocaine was found in the White House, a baggie of cocaine, apparently near the situation.
That's where I left it.
It was Christian Finnegan's cocaine. It was
me.
Oh, I got a scoop.
My cocaine.
When were you at the White House?
Breaking news.
Huh.
It's the Whiter House now that I've been there because of the cocaine, you see.
And you're super Caucasian, I think it's fair to say.
That's actually more that, yeah.
But two things about this. Number one, the White House press corps was asking the president's spokeswoman and even him. He was meeting with the NATO general about the war in Ukraine, and reporters' top question was the cocaine question when they were yelling out. Maybe it wasn't their top, but certainly they asked that a lot. And now it's being politicized by Republicans. The James Comer's the head of the Oversight Committee, and he's demanding a briefing on the, quote, shameful White House cocaine discovery. What are your thoughts on the amount of attention that's getting from reporters and now how it's being politicized? The cocaine. I've never even seen cocaine, I said this week. Never seen it.
I have seen it, but I have never done it. Honestly, as I've gotten older, I feel like I'm like the only person who's ever done cocaine. Like so many more people were doing coke when I was in my 20s than I was aware of at the time. Yeah, and I feel like I really missed out because I feel like it would have really solved a lot of problems for me. No, I'm not fully joking. Like, I mean, other than the ruining your life thing, it's like, oh, it like makes you feel completely confident, irrationally confident, and like super productive. Like that's totally what I need.
Are you doing a cocaine live read on my show? Folks,
it's like Sherry's Berries, but cocaine.
Folks, you need a confidence booster? Back to cocaine.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist by nature, mostly just because I believe people aren't organized enough for conspiracies. Like I think most conspiracies they give people way too much credit. This one, though, it would not fully surprise me if a Trump-friendly Secret Service dude or an anti-Biden person somewhere, either a visitor or somebody like dropped it in the White House on purpose, specifically to create what we're seeing now. It's just so ridiculously on the nose. Do you really think Hunter Biden, which is obviously the implication that people are trying to get across here, is just wandering around the White House with like a baggie of cocaine? Like it's so dumb. It's so fucking dumb.
I think it was why couldn't it have been Joe or Jill Biden's cocaine? You don't think it could have been them?
I mean, God bless him. If Joe Biden at age 109 is snorting lines of blow off Dr. Jill Biden's backside, which is how I imagine it.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's most likely what it is, which is tons of people do cocaine and they have it in their pocket, and sometimes you have to empty your pockets. That's most likely what it was. Usually the most likely scenario. Could very well be something else, like you're saying. But regardless, it's not a thing worth discussing.
It's such a dumb, simple way to sort of create havoc that it just wouldn't shock me if it was just like, this'll, especially on the wake of like, after Hunter basically got off scot-free, quote unquote, with all of his legal shit, basically with this slap on the wrist of just being like, this is bullshit, man. I'm going to fucking do something, and just seeing these.
According
James
to a lot
Comer,
of experts, he did not. They went over prosecuted him, and that wouldn't have happened to a lot of other people.
Of course,
but,
I know.
But I don't know. I don't know.
But it's just like, it wouldn't shock me, and I hope. So. I mean, there's a part of me, not a part of me. I still hold out hope that there's going to be some security footage showing some fucking idiot like planting it, and then it turns out this guy is some Trump supporter, and that's tinfoil hat shit. That's
no evidence of that, but it's a fun
no evidence of that. But that's what I hope.
I'm just asking questions here. Is what you're doing?
Yeah. It's just so lame. It's so fucking lame.
Yeah.
But this is the Joe Biden version of the tan suit.
Great point. Oh, I like that. Finally, I want to ask you about the new social media app. First of all, I just got on Blue Sky thanks to you. And then Threads comes out, which I didn't even know was being worked on. I really was just out of the loop. It's a Facebook, Instagram.
Hit out of nowhere all of a sudden.
Oh, I'm glad I wasn't alone. And now I'm on there, and you had the very best. You're on Threads as well. First thread. Your first thing you posted on Threads was sigh, which was your way of announcing I'm here, like hello. And you are on most of these other ones that have popped up, as am I. And what are your thoughts on what has happened with this new app? How quickly it has become a thing with people, more than all of the other ones, right? It would be fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even close.
Okay.
I mean, the main Elon Musk has done a lot of really despicable things over the last year, but I truly think, for me, the single worst thing he has done is put me in the position where I have to be supportive of Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes, of all the things,
who is really indicative of so much of what's wrong with our modern society. And Zuckerberg in his own way is just as dangerous as Elon Musk. Maybe not just as, but close to, in terms of what he represents in the sort of power of billionaire culture and the sort of the oligarchy, and billionaires trying to sort of become almost like nation states unto themselves. He represents the same evil as Elon Musk. He's just less narcissistic about it and just less petty. He's not quite as, honestly, it's almost like he's a little more clueless, which works to our benefit. He's not quite so obsessed with having his ass kissed by strangers on a day-to-day basis. Whereas Elon Musk is like clearly still upset that he was not invited to the party in seventh grade and has never gotten over it.
I think that is such a hilarious and smart way. And you speak for us so often when you say the worst thing he's done is made me support Mark Zuckerberg. The only thing I would add to what you're saying in terms of, we were talking about this again at the Hangout last night, kind of Zuckerberg versus Musk in a psychoanalysis. And I would say that it seems like Mark Zuckerberg is very concerned with shareholder value and not losing money on his investments. He wants a return on his investment. He seems pretty standard on that as an investor, as a business person. Elon Musk seems more like a sociopath or a narcissistic sociopath in a way that he doesn't really care. He doesn't care at all about losing money or destroying a thing if it makes him feel something good, a lot, whatever.
Well, Musk has clearly bought into his idea of the sort of power of will, that temporary losses will all fall away just by my sheer force of will and personality. If that makes sense, that he said, you can say, oh, he doesn't care about losing money. He doesn't believe he's going to lose money in the long term. Or he's trying to accrue power more than money, I think is what it is. And I think Zuckerberg wants to accrue money more than power. I mean, they go hand in hand, but it's like, I think that Elon Musk believes that he's bought into the myth of his own genius to such a degree that it's like, they'll all come around.
That's a great point. Yeah. And so many millions of other people, not just Americans, have bought into his genius as well.
It's really weird. I think a lot of people see themselves in Elon Musk. It's the same reason, similarly to the way people see themselves in Donald Trump, is that his triumph is my triumph. And the people who hate him are the people who hate me. I would imagine
there's a certain type of person who also attaches, and this is pretty common, certainly very American, success and brilliance equal your net worth, period. It's that simple.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're a brilliant person because you've made so much money. And I don't think you and I need to break down how we define brilliance or wealth. But I mean, that would be probably a lot of people just look at a Donald Trump who has actually lost probably more money he's made, maybe. But
see, I don't know. Yes, I mean, obviously that's the backdrop with everything, but it's more like what they're allowed to get away with, what they can get away with, and how frustrated
more power you have, the more money you have, the more you can get away with, too.
And just like the fact that Donald Trump remains unscathed and unpunished is justification for everything he's done. And that's why I think people fight so hard to try to hold him accountable, because, and I think quite rightly, that's the only way to sort of puncture that is in why people and why his supporters fight so hard against it. Because it's like, no, if he is held accountable, that means that my entire mythos that I spent the last 6 years telling myself is like, oh no, you can lie. You can lie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about,
no one can stop you.
It seems like such a foreign idea of to have admiration around or respect for people getting away with cheating or scamming. Oh, you see, that guy made $1 billion selling bullshit to people. $1 billion. He sold empty mugs. Is it different
than people rooting for, John Dillinger or Bonnie and Clyde or John Gotti or Al Capone? You know what I mean? That it's just like that, I feel like I have no choice in my life. And I feel like I feel very impotent in my life. And so someone who's not impotent, someone who just is a bull in a china shop and does what the fuck he wants and no one can do anything about it, is very appealing.
Yeah, there is a lot of that as well. Well, just one last point or question, getting back to Threads and all these social media apps. I think Anthony Michael Kreese, who I love following on Twitter, he's a con law professor at Georgia State with our friend Eric Siegel. I think he captured this, and I wanted to get your interpretation of it eloquently and kind of vulnerably, because he's gotten very popular there on Twitter. And he writes, I'm low-key sad about all these competitor apps because it took so long to build a really lovely community here that I'm not sure I'll ever replicate elsewhere or will live on if everyone fractures. Like, it's the thing I built here is going to be gone.
It's done. I think people have to accept that it's over. This phase is over, whether we want to accept it or not. It's whatever happens from here on, it will never be what it was. And again, I don't want to be one of those people who looks to the past and sort of sees everything through rose-colored glasses. This beautiful community that people are talking about, I don't remember ever thinking like, man, I love my Twitter community. There were times when it didn't directly annoy me and enrage me the way it does now. But I don't remember ever like being like, man, thank God. I mean, obviously some goofball posts something silly on Twitter and everybody makes fun of it. And then you're like, that whole meme of this app is free. This website is free. When somebody would like, I can't believe we don't have to pay for this, considering how hilarious it is. But it's done. It's kind of like, I don't want to wade into this. This is maybe a really clumsy metaphor, and I apologize to anyone ahead of time, but it's like when someone in your family, a parent or a sibling or a spouse, suffers a terrible medical debacle, say a stroke or a debilitating, disease or something. It's like, it's never going to be like it was.
Right.
You can try to appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
This is maybe I'm actually kind of going through this right now with one of my dogs. One of my dogs is, he's fine, but in turn, he'll be 13 in a few months, right. And his whole demeanor and physical everything is just sort of fallen off a cliff in the past few months. Like, I see him getting older every fucking day, and it's very clear. And I have to really try to love him for the dog he is now.
I love that.
And not measure him against what he was 5 years ago.
That's a good lesson for anybody listening. I like to hear you frame it that way. And that's how we should feel about Twitter.
Exactly. But I think that I don't know what the next thing is, but there's not going to be that one place that Twitter was. And if it is, it won't be a happy thing. I mean,
it's called Truth Social, folks. Head on over.
Just stick with Twitter because they don't know what else to do. But I really feel like the era of it being a happy thing in our lives is done.
Oh, I hate to hear you say that. I'm not fully convinced yet.
I certainly feel like it's now completely useless for any sort of career building.
It could be. Tell me why this is wrong, because Dave Rothkopf tweeted something like this. It's like, you can undo all the bad things you've done and fix it pretty easily.
Well, but you can't get rid of all the competitors, and you can't get rid of the bad taste in people's mouths, and you can't get rid of the sort of the phantom limb feeling.
Right.
I think I mean, I don't know what would have to happen. It would be, I think people are hoping he's going to sell Twitter, or Twitter will go bankrupt, and some benign billionaire that's just not the way it's going to happen, guys. It's just, I don't know what the next thing is. It's probably not going to look like Twitter.
A very thoughtful conversation, as it always is, and I appreciate all your extra time. I took a lot of extra time today. This is great. Thank you, pal.
Thanks, buddy.
And there you have it. Christian Finnegan, newmusicforolds.substack.com. Go subscribe right now. Follow him on all of the social media networks. Let him know that you heard him here. I just posted a video of us talking on TikTok and everywhere else. It's all so crazy. I hope you're having a good weekend. I hope you're doing okay and finding the joy and the light more than the dark and the suffrage, which is all expected. But I just hope you're finding more of the better. I'll talk to you on Monday, if not sooner. Thanks for your support. If you're not subscribed, go to patreon.com/Pete Dominic right now and join us.